Okay, now we're recording, and now we will begin. As I was saying, I'm Greg Newton of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division, the queer bookstore inside the LGBT Community Center, which has been closed since March 13th and will not be opening this calendar year, but we're hoping soon in 2021 to be back. And we now have an online store, as I mentioned. You can visit that at bgsqd.com. That's our website. And then just follow the link to the store. And we'll be adding more and more books. And Lynda's book is already up on the page, so you can purchase her book there, as well as many others. So I'm going to turn it over to Lynda Wolters, who wrote The Voices of LGBTQ, and take it away from there. Thank you, Lynda.
Thanks, Greg. Hi, everybody. So yes, I did. I wrote Voices of LGBTQ+. It came out just in August of 2020. And the book is the second of mine that I have written in the Voices series. And it came out very naturally in that the first book I wrote was Voices of Cancer. I am a cancer patient, and I had never felt marginalized in my life until I became a cancer patient, which most people don't understand, that you are pretty much shunned from your friends. They don't know how to talk to you. They don't know what to say. They don't want to hurt your feelings. They don't know what camp to be in, the, you know, rainbows and unicorns camp of, oh, everything's great and pretty and it's going to be just fine, you know, or the realistic camp of, oh, this is real. And, you know, this isn't the way I thought your life was going to go. I wrote that book with the help of numerous cancer patients. And my son, my youngest son, who is gay, actually explained to me, Mom, this is exactly how it feels to be in the LGBTQ community. And I didn't understand what he was saying. And he explained to me that I was marginalized, that I was suddenly being discriminated against by my friends and family. And you may not think that your family is going to discriminate against you when you have a debilitating terminal disease, but people even like my own mother, who lived a mile from me, visited me once in the hospital while I was sick. She was unable to wrap her mind around this. So when my son told me that this is how he knew that people in the LGBTQ community felt, I started thinking about it. And I started thinking about the parallels of being marginalized, being discriminated against, you know, feeling like I didn't fit in, feeling like I wasn't normal, like, you know, something was wrong with me. I mean, this wasn't my choice. Does that sound familiar? So I just started writing. And of course, my son was the very first interview that I had, and I learned a lot. I learned what my son had never been telling me before, the things that he was keeping inside. And so through him, I started meeting other people. I mean, I knew his friends, some of whom were also gay or lesbian. And then I started meeting transgender people. And it was the transgender population that really opened my eyes and brought this whole thing for full circle. And that is that none of this is a choice, just like having cancer. That being marginalized is a very lonely, desperate place to be. And I decided that we needed to get a voice out there to show people that we're all the same. Every one of us, doesn't matter what skin you're in, what gender, what orientation, that we are all just human. So my goal and hope with my book is to just bring this into a positive conversation where people can just talk and communicate. And oh, Hi, Quinn. And so that's where the book began. And I'd love to introduce my friend Shannon. She has become one of my nearest and dearest friends through a unique set of circumstances called writing a book. I met Shannon, and I'd love for her to tell a little bit about herself and her story. And then hopefully we can all just, jump in and have a positive conversation, talk about some things, and maybe everybody can just feel like this is a safe space and, go from there.
Thanks, Lynda. My name is Shannon Hansen. I go by she, her pronouns. I am a transgender woman, which is how I met Lynda. So I met Lynda through a mutual friend who I really trusted. And she said, I know this woman who's a friend of hers who is writing a book. And honestly, I was a bit apprehensive. We did the interview, I believe, summer of 2018. So we've known each other for a little over 2 years. I transitioned in the summer of 2015. So it's been a while. I work as a professional engineer for a semiconductor manufacturer, Micron Technology. They make computer memory and cell phone memory and memory for big server racks. I had what was probably the stereotypical American dream, really. I was married, obviously have a nice career, had a home, cars, took vacations, all those types of things that we all are kind of told we should aspire to. And no matter how successful I was, no matter what I did, who I engaged with, I really never was comfortable in my own skin. And unfortunately for me, it kind of got to a place where if I didn't do something about it, there was really no point in being in this world. And so in 2015, I took a pretty big leap. I was married at the time, and I decided I have to figure this out. I have to really explore who I am. And through my transition, there was a lot of change, obviously, a lot of loss, a lot of grief. But sitting back now on the other side of it, I'm here. Number one, that's probably the most important thing. And I get to live a fulfilling life. And I'm not here to say that everything's perfect. I'm not here to say that everything's wonderful, but at least I feel comfortable in my own skin, and it's a place to start from. So since transition, there's been a lot of change. I divorced from my ex. I figured out how to co-parent. I figured out what being a professional and a woman looks like, and have learned a lot of lessons along the way about that. And we can certainly talk about that. But I don't know, that's kind of my life in a nutshell. Outside of LGBT and LGBTQ activities and work, I really enjoy the outdoors and kind of extreme sports like mountain biking, water skiing, and snowboarding. And here in Idaho, we have lots of awesome outdoor opportunities.
Thanks, Shannon. I appreciate you. I'm open if the other people would like to say hello and introduce yourselves, but I certainly don't want to put you on the spot, so don't feel you have to jump in, but know that the floor is open. We're just going to have an open conversation. Otherwise I can read from my book or something. So one thing that I did notice when I don't even like the word interview because it sounds so formal and so clinical. But one thing that I noticed when I was having conversations with people in the LGBTQ community was the initial fear. So I am a white, cisgender, heteronormative individual who, from all outward appearances, doesn't really have, I don't know, anything other than the quote unquote norm going for me. And I noticed that a lot of people in the LGBTQ community take a pause before they want to come into my circle. And I'll never forget when I opened myself up to be vulnerable to Shannon. You might think that because I'm the one that wrote the book, she was the one that had to be vulnerable. But fast forward, after Shannon and I knew each other for maybe 9 months or so, would you say? I found out that Shannon was going to be at a silent protest at our state capitol. And that's only what, a walking block and a half from where I work, downtown in a law firm. I'm like, oh yeah, I can do this. So I go down there, traipsing along. I hold up a sign with Shannon, and we're just silent. And someone comes up to me and says something about, oh, well, isn't your father so-and-so? And I was like, oh dear, here we go. Take a deep breath. And I said, yes, it is. And Shannon looks at me, and she looks at me, and she's like, your dad is Fred Riggers? And I said, yeah. My dad was very involved in the legislature, not as a part of the governing body, but as a citizen, a very active citizen for 17 years. He was at the state capitol every day of legislature for those 17 years, unless he was under the weather. And he was an activist against LGBTQ and numerous other groups that I personally believe in. My dad was extremely well known. There is a day in Idaho named after my father for all of the work that he has done to help others in the state. The people with disabilities, that day is now named after my father for the state of Idaho. My dad was really kind of a big deal in his own little world, but he was really damaging to me and my son in his anti-human, anti-LGBTQ, anti-people movements. If you were not white, cis, hetero, you were not okay to my dad. You might have thought you were, but when push came to shove, my dad was prosecutorial witness against many who stood in silent protest to add the words into our state constitution, which simply states that there will be no discrimination and there will be equality for in regard to sexual orientation and gender identity. That has not passed, but people are still protesting and people are still getting arrested, and they are silent protests for the most part. So my dad was kept out of the loop of my son being gay. Whether he knew or not, he never said, because that would go against everything he stood for. And I encouraged my son not to tell my father, because my son shares a birthday with my dad. They were extremely close, and that would have been a deal breaker. So until the day my father passed, we never spoke of this. My father passed. That's when I got sick, wrote my first book, wrote my second book, and decided I don't care who my father was. But when I had to come out to Shannon, whom I had become quite close with, I was terrified. And when she said to me, that is your father? I mean, and, okay, now understand, Shannon's like 5'9", I'm 5 and a prayer. And so Shannon looks down at me and she goes, that's your dad? And I'm like, yeah, you know, feeling like the little girl going, oh God. And I said, the only thing I could say, and that was, would you have ever talked to me if you would have known he was my father? And she says, I don't know. And I said, would you have been my friend if you would have known he was my dad? And she also said, I don't know. And it just struck me, the power that one person can project, and the damage that that person can do to so many others, the ripple effect. And my book was not finished, and it had not even come close to being published by that point. And I knew that is exactly what it needed to happen, was I needed to finish this book, because here's this woman that I would never have met had all these circumstances not have played out, and yet my father would rather erase her. So it put me in a very weird dichotomy, because, you know, I mean, my dad is my dad, and yes, he could be, I'm sorry, he's passed away. He could be a very ornery human, but he was still my dad. And I'm sure each one on this screen can appreciate how they crave and need. It's a requirement that our family accept us. And, you know, I don't know that I've ever really thanked Shannon for that. So, you know, I guess I can use this opportunity to thank you for, you know, taking the time and actually thinking about our relationship and choosing me as a human instead of me, the daughter of. And I hope that others that are watching this, maybe down the road, you can appreciate that story, because that is a very raw, vulnerable place to be, and we all need acceptance. And I know that the family dynamic is one of the biggest issues that I have encountered when speaking with people in the LGBTQ community. Yes, Shannon, it's over to you.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to add on to that. It can be hard as a person of a marginalized group to really kind of trust other people outside of our tight little community. But as I've learned through my journey, the really like sort of fulfilling moments and experiences often come from branching out, reaching out. How else in the world are people like Lynda's father or my own family, how are they going to change if we all stay locked in our own little safe places and in our own little echo chambers? And so I've learned probably one of the most powerful lessons in my transition is to not like assume or presuppose what how someone's going to respond to meeting someone like me or hearing about my past. I think that as a transgender woman, I'm very sensitive to people judging me. But when I think about like if I see someone who has a particular political flag in the back of their big giant pickup truck, I'm likely to make an assumption about them, and that is really it's a way of judging them, and that's exactly what I don't want people to do about me. I would like for folks to get to know who I am, and certainly the fact that I'm a transgender woman is part of who I am, but I'd like them to get to know everything about me. And there are people who I've met along the way in my journey who are really the most unlikely supporters. And some of them are very passionate advocates and allies for people like me. And if I would have stayed in my own little shell and you know, had I known that Lynda's father was who he was, I may not have, at the time, I may not have engaged with her. I think today I would probably have a good laugh about it and then just be like, well, tell me about yourself. But there's been a lot of water under the bridge since we met as well. So, and just to add on to Lynda's story about her father, there was a documentary done following the Add the Words organization that was trying to add sexual orientation and gender identity to Idaho's Human Rights Act. And her father he's in one of the most powerful scenes in the documentary, and unfortunately they kind of paint him as a villain, and you know, it's a documentary. What he said and what he did was real, but I think sometimes when we see media like that, whether it's a documentary or whether it's a news story, what I've learned is everybody's multidimensional, right? Lynda tells me of positive things about her father, and I think about my own family members who I maybe struggle with, don't understand who I am, but they have redeeming qualities. So I don't know, I'm probably rambling here, but I think what I've taken away from a lot of these experiences is to really get to know people long before trying to make any sort of determination about whether or not they're going to be supportive.
You know, Shannon is right. One thing that I unfortunately did by not talking to my own father was I robbed him of the ability to say his piece. I don't know what he would have said about Hunter, my son. I assume I knew what he was going to say, and therefore I kept him from whatever conversation, and that was not my right to do. And you know, I don't really have a lot of regrets in my life. I really don't. But I would say that I definitely regret that. I wished I could have gone back and done that differently. You know, and I would encourage other people that if there's someone in your life that you need to have that conversation with, whatever it is, you need to have a conversation, because, you know, we're all on the same planet together. And just because we don't look or act or, I don't know, pick whatever adjective there is, adverb, does not mean that we're not all human and we don't all have feelings, you know. And again, we all need that community and we all need our family. And this also could dovetail into religion. There are many, if not most, of the LGBTQ people that I have spoken with has a very difficult time wrestling with their religious belief and who they are. A dear friend of mine, a very dear friend of mine, was a Catholic priest, and he allowed me to write about his story in my book. And Mark is just, I mean, just that kind. I mean, you know, unfortunately, nowadays we hear priest and we go to a certain negative place, which is so unfortunate. A few bad apples and everybody's judged. Mark actually went to counseling for over a year. He knew he was gay. He had been involved in the seminary for, I think, 9 or 10 years, maybe a little bit longer. And he knew that he could not live his life any longer if he did not come out. He also knew that his lifelong calling of being a priest could not, therefore, continue. So he was very torn. You know, how could his God let this happen to someone like him, someone that was devout and was abstaining from, you know, his own sexual desires, to be a priest, to fulfill what he felt God wanted. And through Mark, I learned such a great deal, and that was that religion, like people, does not have to be black and white. I also learned from Mark that what we have been taught as the truth in the writing of the good book may not necessarily be proper translation of where that book started, literally hundreds and hundreds, thousands of years ago. How long has the Bible been in play? At any rate, Mark opened my eyes, and I did a lot of research, and I would really like to encourage people, especially people that feel that they had to choose between their sexuality or their gender identity and God, as well as people that are condemning people for their sexuality, their sexual orientation, excuse me, or their gender identity. I would really encourage you to do your own research, because everything you read is not necessarily the truth, the way it was originally put into place. I do write about this. I know it's a difficult subject, and I don't want to harp on it because I don't want people to get enraged. Just know that we're all given our own mind and our own opinion, and I would strongly, strongly encourage you to look back into the 1940s when there was a translation shift in the good book. And during that translation shift, I think you will learn that somewhere along the line, words were brought into the Bible and lexicons were changed, and true meanings are no longer carried forward. And that is what we have been taught in the good book. So do your research, people. Next subject. It's a tough one, but it's real. I really believe that religion is really, you know, it's something that we need to cross in battle. We just do. There are wonderful churches out there. Do not give up on your faith, whatever that faith may be. I think we all have to have faith and hope. It doesn't have to be in one deity. It doesn't have to be in the one that I have. It doesn't have to be, you know, the one that, I don't know, that is supposedly the best, the one, the only. But I think we all need faith, you know? So let's keep the hope.
Yeah.
Mute herself, so she's gonna go.
What's that?
I unmuted myself so I could chime in on that, because the religious conversation really hits home with me. So real quick, Zoey Reininger. I also live in Boise, Idaho, and I'm a transgender woman and transitioned 4+ years ago. And through that's how I ended up meeting Shannon. We connected on Facebook, and she was about a year ahead of me and had a lot of advice and everything to offer, because it's a difficult time. But I was raised very Christian. I was non-denominational evangelical Christian up into my mid-20s, and ended up through various events losing my faith in that regard. But the religion was something that kept me from sort of coming to terms with the fact that I was transgender. I was very, something was wrong with me. It kept me repressed and closeted, because boys don't think the things that I was thinking, and it's a thing. But since coming out and transitioning, my family remains extremely religious, and that's been a point of conflict the whole time. I'm actually having coffee with my mom on Monday because we haven't really spoken in a while, and I have stated to her that I don't know where I fit into this family anymore, because my brother and his wife won't let me see my niece and nephews, and it's been 4.5 years. I've literally not known my niece longer than I have known her by this point, and I really struggle with that. And I don't know what to do with these last 4.5 years of pain that they've caused me. I'm not sure how to move past it. And I know there's some hard conversations coming up soon. So yeah, the religious struggle really hits home with me. And I struggle with it's funny. I used to be very homophobic and transphobic, go figure. And now it's flip-flopped, and I have to fight having a negative reaction when I hear somebody talk about the fact that they're religious. I really struggle with that because I instantly have assumptions about how they're going to treat me, how they're going to think of me, and it's hard.
You know, first I just need to say thank you, Zoey, for opening up. It's a place I will not be able to understand other than just being empathetic and seeing your pain. I can say that I was raised Catholic by myself. My family is not Catholic. And I then became just a Christian going church person because I got the big D, divorce. And that is just no. But I can say this. I have read the Bible 5 times cover to cover. I, every single solitary day, read the Bible. Every day, by choice, starting in my late 30s, early 40s, 5 times. Every day, I just read every day because I just wanted to know what the Bible said. When my friend Mark, whom I would literally place my life in his hands, I trust him that much. When Mark, the priest, sent me the articles that opened my eyes, that started me doing the research, I called the editor, who in turn called the printer, stop everything, because things have to change. This book is not complete and it's not right. And I went down a new path because of what I learned. What I learned did not equal what I read. And I have since not read a single passage of the Bible because I can't. I can't open the book that has been lying to me, being professed to be the truth. I can't do it. So your feelings are valid when it comes to being fearful of how religious people are going to look at you and probably treat you. And that's unfortunate. I guess the one thing for you I would suggest is just, keep your heart open, because mostly they just don't know. I didn't know. And I read the Bible. I mean, I can't say that it doesn't say in there that you are going to hell because you're gay or trans. I can't say that. But moreover, what I can say is it talks about pedophilia, not homosexuality, not transgender. And that's the point of the lexicon that's gotten completely confused, and the word structure has changed completely. I don't know that we can ever get religious people to open their eyes unless their heart is ready. And how do we do that? I guess we just have to live our best lives. People like me need to stand next to people like you. And I say that meaning ally with LGBTQ. Because, women weren't allowed to vote or on property or what have you. Just until recently, we had to have our husbands approval or a father's approval. And how did that change? That changed when the men walked beside the women and helped move things along. The same thing's going to happen here. So we, as a community, as a society, need to just start stepping up and stepping out and standing beside. It's Shannon and I have had this conversation numerous times, how easy it is for me to sit in my own house and profess all of this. Super easy for me to write this all down on paper. I can tell you this, someone actually told me before I published my book that I should wait until I pass away to have it published because of the negative ramifications that were going to come down on me. And that's when my comment was, and that is exactly why I'm going to publish it while I'm alive, because I'm ready. I mean, I really am, but it's not easy. You know, it's not easy. The easy route for me as an ally is to say these things to my friend Shannon, to put my arm around my son Hunter, and shoosh them out the door, and then go live my own separate life. But the right thing, and the thing that I have to do to make Shannon's world safe, to make her life equal, to make sure my son is not in danger when he travels, to afford all of you the same equal pay and equal opportunity in housing, is to stand up outside of my safety net. So when I'm at work and my boss says a slur, it's my job to say, you can't talk that way, that's offensive. It's my job to be open and forthcoming about my relationships with people who are not heteronormative cisgender. It's my job to just talk about my friends like my friends and not keep you closeted, because it's easy to keep you closeted. It's hard to put myself in a position where others are going to say, ooh, I didn't know you were one of those. Whatever that even means. You know, I guess I'm an ally, sorry. Oopsie. You're never going to change your family, Zoey. You're never going to. But you can show them what love really looks like. You know, it's easy to say, oh, you know, would Jesus judge me? You know, or what would Jesus do? Or, you know, all these cute little quips, but you know what, that doesn't change anything. That's just BS fodder. The best thing you can do is just be your authentic, loving self. If you're a friend of Shannon's, I already know your character. So your family, they're holding on to something and choosing words over the person. And I don't know how to help your pain, but just know that you've got another family, you know, and sometimes we have to choose, you know, to put boundaries around our own heart to save ourselves, because, you know, the alternative, I watched it in my son's eyes, and, you know, the alternative is not good. You're here. And you are valid, and you are who you are supposed to be.
I'm glad you're doing what you're doing, Lynda, because it does, I think it does help for people to hear from someone who's not queer, who's not LGBTQ, like, okay, you know, it just has a different, they'll listen to you differently, just as white people will listen to other white people about race in a way that they will never listen to Black people about, talking about their experiences. So it's so important. I think also just so many, I mean, I think about my parents are also evangelicals. I was raised in that, and we don't talk anymore, and I don't know if I ever will talk with them anymore. It's very frustrating and sad. But I do know what's encouraging to me is just the fact that, well, my brothers, my family has had to deal with this now. They've had to deal with me for some 30 years of being out, and they can't unknow that. And my nieces and nephews know that they have a gay uncle, and they can't unknow that. And that is different because my parents, for, I don't know, the first 30, 40 years of their lives didn't know any queer people, or not to my knowledge. I would be shocked. If they did, they didn't interact with them. And so that does give me hope. It's just like generationally, we're not going back in the closet. There are more and more of us talking and out and about and alive and surviving and even thriving sometimes. And that's not changing. That's not going back. So I mean, right now we're in such a crazy historical moment. I don't know what to say about that except not going back. Women have the right to vote. I don't see that being taken away.
Maybe.
Yeah, we're not going back. A lot of people desperately want to go back, and that is all too clear right now.
Scary.
And it's hard to know what's going to happen in the next year or two, but I do feel like they're scared. They're scared that the world that was so solid for them is melting, is crumbling. And they're desperate and they're scared. And I understand that because I think queer people know what that's like too, because it happens from within. Like, I can't control this. I can't make this stop. And I think that's part of what they're feeling is they can't control this. The world is changing around them and they can't control it, and it scares them to death. I don't know. I'm kind of
the other thing that is the reality of the times we live in right now is it really speaks to just the concept of privilege, right? And privilege is a dirty, dirty word in hetero, male, white culture. When you use the word privilege, there's a certain demographic that feels like you're throwing rocks at them by using a word, a non-charged word, a descriptor. And what's happening is that there are certain people who are experiencing a minute slip of a tiny bit of privilege. Folks like Zoe and I and Hunter and you, we all know what it's like to feel a ton of privilege slip away through living our true selves by choosing to be alive. I used to be able to I was king of the world, right? I was a white, seemingly hetero, cisgender male. The world was mine for the taking. And now even just the small amount of privilege difference between white male and white female it's eye-opening. I work as a professional engineer. I feel like I've acquired more skills over time. However, my voice and influence in my professional dealings is diminished just because I'm a woman. When people also overlay that with I'm part of the LGBT community, that also reduces my privilege. And so I know what it's like, and many of us know what it's like to have some of that privilege slip away. And the kind of gut reaction is cry me a river, right? Like, but on this, in the same sort of space, I also understand what it feels like and understand why people are behaving in the way that they are, and it really truly is out of fear.
Yeah, one interesting conversation I had with my father after the 2016 election. We didn't talk for a while, and then I finally said, we really need to talk. And something that came out was really interesting to me. My dad always told me he grew up in rural California, and we always heard as kids how they had to pick prunes in order to get the money to pay for their school clothes. And, you know, we had it so easy, that kind of thing, which is like, well, you made it easy for me. What am I, what am I supposed to do? But he added a new detail this time. And he said, we were the only white family that was there picking. And I thought, that is an interesting detail. And you clearly feel like you shouldn't have had to be there because of that whiteness. But you did. You did have to be there. And there's a resentment. And I thought that was interesting that all those years he never mentioned that part. And now he mentioned it. And he mentioned it in the context of saying that they voted for the current president because they felt like everything was just going crazy, and that now the worst thing you could be is a straight white male. And I thought, okay, wow, that is what's threatening you so much. It's revealing, you know, and also I think it helps us to see how these things are so twisted and tied up in each other, race and gender and religion and all of these things that give us a sense of who we are and what our position in the world is. And yeah, it's scary. It's scary when your position changes and when you can't assume anymore what's going to happen, or, you know, it is scary. And I want to be compassionate at the same time that it's like, yeah, it's maddening. Like, I can't believe that you're so threatened. Like, you're so fine. You're so, like, go to Yemen. Like, you need a reality check. Everyone needs a summer vacation in Yemen to get a clue that you have running water, you have food, you have health insurance, like, you've got it really good. So, yeah.
So I'm not a political advocate. I don't like politics at all, but we live in a political environment. I think one thing that I would like to have allies understand is that when you choose to poke that little hole in the ballot or to make the X or what have you, you need to take the whole person into account when you are putting your trust in your vote. You can't just look at capitalism and say, oh, this is a good vote, because you have got to remember the entire person is attached one way or the other. You must remember that your vote is your identifier as to what your character really is. If you vote for somebody that wants to eliminate groups or identities or individuals because of difference, then you are essentially saying, I do not care, nor do I love anyone in those groups that identify as those people, that are those individuals. This is a conversation I've had in my own house as of late. Shannon knows my husband extremely well. Sometimes I think better than me. They do all these extreme sports together. My husband is that mid-white, privileged, cisgender, heteronorm. He's got it all. He is everything. With the recent passing of our Supreme Court justice, I became fearful. And my husband, it did not resonate with my husband well. He did not understand. And I had to explain to him in very simple terms that the next vote mattered probably more than anything in the world, because his wife may need his permission to vote in the future if things keep going the way they're going. That his wife may not be able to get health care if we keep going the way we're going, unless he gives me permission. And that his wife will no longer be able to buy the rental properties that he enjoys the income from if he doesn't consider his vote. When things like that started to sink in, I had to shift, because I always do. I love to watch my husband squirm. I said, you know, it's no different in regard to the LGBTQ community. Oh, why is that? Well, if you make a certain vote, a certain choice, then essentially what you're doing is erasing the relationships you have with anybody in the LGBTQ community, regardless of the fact that you appreciate and enjoy capitalism. Well, but I really like, you know, the financial this, that, and the other. Well, that's fine, dear, but you can't separate that from the person. So your vote is all encompassing. And if you vote a certain way, then you are essentially saying to your son, to your friends, I do not love you. I do not care that this person wants to eradicate you. And so my husband says, well, maybe I just shouldn't vote at all. And I said, well, maybe you shouldn't. I said, if you are going to cast a vote just for finances, then it's probably best that you don't vote at all. And we left it at that. Is that a positive ending? I don't know. Did it open his eyes? I think so, because he had never actually thought beyond the fact that he likes the business person and the fact that they can make money and help him make money. Okay. You know, am I throwing him under the bus? Probably. But does he know I do these things? Yes, he does.
So something I wanted to chime in with regarding that comment about that one particular political party is, you know, better at the capitalism side of things or running our country. The reality is the jury's out on all that. There is a ton of gray area, and I don't think that, I mean, we wouldn't have a national debt if either political party had a lock on how to manage the economy. However, things like supporting human rights are rather binary. You either are for it or you're against it. And so from my perspective, that's clear, right? Like it's clear that there are certain choices out there that will protect people like your son, like Zoey, like me. And there's a million and one things that could impact the economy. And I think that whether someone's, you know, political leaning is one way or another, it's just going to end up in a soup of gray anyways. So.
It's fascinating to me though, when I do have these conversations, and gosh, I'm so sorry, Jody, that's my husband's name. He's not in here, but I'm apologizing in advance for throwing him under the bus to have this conversation, but it needs to be had, and it's the example I've got. So here we go. My husband means no malice. He really doesn't. He is just that ignorant to the big scheme. He is so not involved with what is going on that he just looks at the surface issue and says, yeah, that's the way I want things to go, is, you know, this. And therefore, I think this is a good money-making person, so that's the way I should vote. And then when you bring all this other stuff on, he's like, well, wait, this has nothing to do with Shannon. I love Hunter. What are you talking about? You know, wait, all of a sudden, if I vote one way, I don't love these people. And I'm like, okay, but you're not looking at the big picture. Again, I think this is a subject where education is key. It's totally paramount, because people like my husband that are essentially running this company. Thanks, Shannon. So people, you know, my husband is in, I know, right? Country.
Yeah.
My husband is that demographic. But does that mean, and he's not stupid. Oh my gosh, by any means. He's not stupid at all. He just, I don't know, isn't well informed as to what really is going on out there. And he was rather surprised when his eyes were open to the fact that certain votes mean you are voting against those that you love. And he had never thought about that. I spoke with a young man named Chris, and he brought that to my attention in regard to the 2016 election. He said that he was so hurt by his family's overt conversations of their voting for our current president. He felt so rejected by his family because of their votes. And I will be honest with you, that was the very first time it crossed my mind that I needed to look at where these people are in regard to the entire whole big picture. Now, I'm not saying I voted one way or the other, but I am saying as a hetero cis person, that was an eye-opener to me. I'm like, oh yeah, I wonder, yeah, that's a really good point, that if we vote this way, you know, so the LGBTQ community might take this as truth and a given. But I'm here to tell you, those not in the LGBTQ world are not necessarily looking at that when they're casting their votes, because they may not have put that nuance into their decision-making process. I can say that is the fact with my husband. And if he's going to choose to not vote rather than to vote that would be harmful, I would rather he not make a bad vote. And I would think that is one case where this may be a good non-vote. Just my 2 cents.
Although I do like to say to people, if you don't vote, then you
don't
vote
complain.
in one.
Yeah, you don't have a right to complain if you don't vote. That's what I always say.
Yeah, not voting is kind of a vote in a way as well, you know, but that gets complicated.
We just need to think about it. And I think we need to be as impassionate as we can be. We also need to tone it down, because we have been in these rooms and we have heard the conversations. I've seen your tears. I have watched my son physically shake. After the last election, he curled up in a ball for probably 9 months. I kid you not. It was to the point where, I mean, I tried everything. I tried, you know, the hugs and kisses. I tried the, you know, oh, you know, you're just being silly. It's not, you know, I tried the, well, maybe I need some counseling. I even tried the sun, snap out of it. You know, no one's going to kill you. And now I look at that and I go, holy cow, this is that real. And his emotions and feelings really were that valid. And I get that now. But I get that because I am involved. I'm immersed. I mean, you guys are my friends. You are my family. You really are. I mean, that's just all there is to it. And so I hear you, I see you, but the other people may not. So it's easy for us to get heightened in our emotions when we tell people, if you vote this way, then you're killing me. What are you saying? I'm not killing you, I'm just voting, you know? Education, we need to educate, but we need to softly educate. Same with religion. You know, the best way is to show them by example, to have those good conversations, you know. I know it's a very loaded subject right now.
Yeah. Education, that's one of the things that I've really, well, maybe not enjoyed, but it's been very prominent with my transition is that, I mean, before I transitioned, I didn't even know any trans people. Like, I was the first one that I had knowingly met. And and it was the same way with the people that I work with, because I'm still working. I work at a surgery center, and I transitioned at work. And so half the people that are still there knew who I, met me before the person, that I am today. And none of them had met a trans person. And I've had so many conversations that kind of ended with people saying like, I had no idea. I never would have imagined having to deal with that, or having to, just, and so I kind of consider myself an ambassador when I'm at work, when I'm out in public, because I can't really hide who I am. I'm 6 feet tall and flat. I kind of stand out. And and so I've always been very open with my story and with who I am and what I've gone through. And I really feel like I've had an impact on my heteronormative cisgender friends who would probably maybe even never had a conversation with a gay person. So I've really enjoyed that aspect of it. It's nice to see those aha moments, and I always look forward to those.
That being said, I asked a very dear to my heart young man. He was my son-in-law. He was married to my son. I asked him, so tell me about, what happened when you came out? And he goes, I never came out. I'm like, well, what do you mean? You're gay, right? And he goes, well, did you come out as straight? Oh, okay, sorry, didn't think of it that way,
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, Shannon and Zoey, Jeremy, if you want to join in, please don't feel like you have to. Do you ever feel like that? Like, why do I have to keep coming out? Every time, Greg, every time. Do you feel like, you're always explaining yourself, or do you just, I don't know, is it just part of your reality?
I think that for me, and I have an interesting story that I like to tell people. It's taken my family quite a while, longer than I wanted them to accept who I am as a woman. And now my mother, when she introduces me to new friends or folks in the neighborhood, she'll introduce me as Shannon and her daughter and use the proper pronouns, which is amazing. And I'm so proud of how far she's come. However, when she has been, and it's only happened a handful of times, but when she is in a situation where she has to introduce me and my partner, and I'm a lesbian, she has to introduce me and my girlfriend, and she'll use kind of the standard like terminology to dart around the fact that I'm a lesbian. So she'll say something like, this is Shannon's friend. We all know that sort of cliche thing. And to have come so far and yet we still can't get there.
Pick up on the lesbianism.
It's totally ironic.
Yeah.
And so someone like me, I have the experience of really having two of these identifiers. And one of them I wear every moment of every day. When I walk out the door, I'm a big, tall lady and I have a deep voice, and I don't tend to hide it, but just through my interactions in the world, I communicate to the world. I come out to the world. I have to come out as a transgender woman. And some part of me wishes that I just never had to disclose that, or that it could be my own choosing. And people will disclose it for me, which is really unfortunate. I will have professional situations where someone will have ran out in front of me and said, effectively, the trans lady's coming, and here's this woman who's going to have to interact with you, and oh, by the way, she's transgender. And so, yeah.
Ringing the bell.
I wish that I didn't have to go through that. But I also know what it's like to carry this additional identifier of being a lesbian, and to have that choice over who I tell. And it's quite honestly a luxury. It's privilege. Zoe, you have something you want to say?
No.
Okay.
No, it just no. I mean, Shannon said it really well, and it always is. It's always a strange conversation because when I'm talking to somebody, getting to know like a new coworker or something, sometimes they can kind of tell that something different about me, and they're not exactly sure what it is. And then the conversation will get, or somebody else at work will out me in a private conversation or something like that. And so I had a coworker say, like, she's like, so did you come out as gay, like younger in life? And then I was like, no, because I, my sexual orientation, I'm attracted to women. And it's always kind of a shock because people just assume that trans women started off as gay men. And that's one of those things that I am an ambassador for, is people, gender identity and sexual orientation are, they're different. They're totally different spectrums. And I was like, well, no, I didn't really come out as gay till after I transitioned. And she kind of was like, what does that mean? Like I'm a lesbian. So yeah, it's this two-part coming out, which is an interesting conversation.
I had to have the same few moments of thought, because when, okay, wait, how does this work? Okay. And then it's like when all the pieces fit, I was like, oh, I get it. Because I remember asking Shannon, how did I say this to you? Are you lesbian? Or I can't remember how I said it, but her answer to me, I remember, was, she says, it depends on how you look at me. Do you consider me a woman? Then yes, I'm gay. If you look at me as a person that has transitioned, then, wait, how did that go? Well, at any rate, I mean, and it was, do you look at me as a woman? And if that answer is yes, then, okay, the next step is I am lesbian. And it is something that, I had to think about too. Okay, so I have a question. Since this is a conversation that I'm hoping lots and lots of people watch and get some insight on, if you're willing, if you could educate on one thing to the cisgender heteronorm community, what would you want them to know? Like, for example, my son-in-law would want to not have to come out because, why should he? Why should he have to identify himself as being gay? I don't have to walk into a room and say, hello, I'm straight. What is the one thing that you would want someone not in the LGBTQ community to know or understand or learn? I know there's a whole gamut of things, but for example, like you say, you feel like you're an ambassador for being a transgender woman. Well, you also said that someone else outed you. Maybe if there was education on how that felt, those that are outside the LGBTQ community would not out you. For example, if I knew it hurt Shannon's feelings, I would never go to my friends and say, oh, so Shannon, comma, my transgender girlfriend, comma, and I went out to the, mall and went shopping, blah, blah, blah. I mean, if I knew that, I would never say that. Well, I don't say that, but I'm just saying, little things. What could we do, to help you?
I'll say one thing and then I do have to go. I'm so sorry. I mean, it's broad, but I think it's education in whatever ways people feel comfortable educating themselves. We all have different learning styles, but there's so little excuse for most of us who have the resources to, you know, follow people on Facebook or get a book from the library, or I think introducing yourselves to perspectives. You're not going to learn unless you're introducing yourselves to new perspectives, and something that there are so many perspectives within the LGBTQ community. I've bought books on the sex lives of trans people. I bought memoirs and, you know, books outside my experience, because there are just things I want to educate myself on. And then you get to know new voices, and you get to follow them. So I think if you can examine sort of what are the gaps in your community and actively work to fill them. And I will listen to your other thoughts after this, but I do have to go. Thanks so much for a really great conversation.
Thank you for joining us, Jeremy.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Good night.
I'll go really quickly. I think I kind of already alluded to this, but for the people in my life, I personally, I'm not worried about them sharing that I'm trans, because it's something that's visible. It doesn't take a detective and a whole lot of work to go figure out what's going on with me. But what I would like the people in my life to, you know, do as a favor to me is share all the other qualities about me before you disclose that I am transgender. So share that I'm a successful female engineer, share that I have patents, share that I'm a mother, share that I am a, you know, I'm into action sports, I'm a badass action sports chick, like share that. And, you know, if the conversation works its way towards something like, oh, well, Shannon's also an advocate and spends a lot of time advocating for the community, and this is why, great. But please don't, you know, share that I'm a trans person first. I don't want that to be the first thing about me, because we're all multidimensional, just like Lynda's father, in one aspect of his life was harmful to people like me. He was also a wonderful person. And I don't think it's fair to categorize someone by one trait. That's not right. So yeah, share all the good things about me. And you can share the bad things about me too, that I'm, you know, I don't like to iron my clothes, and sometimes my hair is a mess. Like, share those things. Those are reasonable. Those are fair game.
Perfect. Thanks, Shannon.
I just wish I didn't fear difference. You know, that different didn't always equal bad. You know, or raise fear. You know, people are different. We're all different, and we change throughout our lives. You know, so yeah, more compassion.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Kind of going back to the question of like coming out and what's where was I going with this? Like, when you say you don't have to go into a room or announce to people, oh, I'm straight. Like, you don't have to come out as straight. So many of our conversations are and our culture is based around heteronormativity. Mm-hmm. You know, when little kids, like when a boy and a girl are, you know, hanging out in elementary school, like, oh, is this your girlfriend? Like, it's always, it's based on like, oh, when are you going to start? Are you interested in girls? Like, if we just talked about relationships between people, which is what it comes down to, we don't have to define it by if it's a gay relationship or if it's a straight relationship. It's just relationships between consenting adults. Like, that's what it is. And I wish it didn't have to be so other.
If it's any help to ease that, I see that change already coming in my children's generation. And my guess is even the generation that's coming up behind them. My kids are in their 20s. The eldest, he might be 30. I don't know. That makes me a bad mom. You won't watch. I'll just won't tell him.
We'll edit that part out.
Greg, that's up to you. Edit that out. So, but what I see with my children is they are so much more open and so much less constrictive when it comes to conversations, even with their own spouses and partners. They're just so much more open. And I think those conversations are going to flow. Now, I don't have any grandchildren yet. My kids are not, they're not at that point, and they may never be. And I'm totally fine with it, which is another weird thing because most people are like, what? You don't have any grandkids? Your kids need, whatever. They don't have to. And that's another thing too, is, you know, just let people just be who they are. But I hear the way my children interact with their peers and their significant others, and it is completely different than me and my age group. I mean, you know, there's 20 some years different, and they are just so much more less concerned. They don't care. I mean, everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time. Some people might jump into them, but you know, it's just, we are really all just people, just like you're saying, Zoe. And I really think that the groups of youngsters that are coming up are going to speak differently. I have a sister-in-law and a cousin who are both, interestingly enough, 6th grade teachers. And that middle school is just, man, those brains are really just growing and changing. And for these two to be teaching the youngsters, it just warms my heart, because they are teaching them empathy. They are teaching them to use requested proper pronouns. They are teaching them, you know, just to be kind. And that, as you're saying, Zoe, that things are not black and white, you know, that we don't know what happened in your life to make you ornery today, but we need to give you some grace. And, you know, rather than, oh, you're just being a jerk, and, you know, that's how I grew up. I mean, you know, kids were bullies, and it's just not accepted anymore. So I think we have some hope. I think there is some hope. And I don't think parents are gendering their children quite the way they did, you know, even like what I did with my kids. I knew, and I've said this, and I don't know, I don't really care what people believe or not, but I knew my child was gay. He was 2 months old, and I knew he was gay. I'd already had 2 boys. Here's the third. There's something, he's just completely different. I knew it from the time, and I would not let my other boys gender shame him, even though because he wanted everything pink, you know? So it was all about, oh, you're so gay. And, oh boy, that just did not fly in my house. But I mean, without knowing what I was doing, I was already encouraging these kids. And my children truly are just, gosh, I sound like I'm touting about my kids, but they really are different, because they were raised with a more open, it doesn't matter if he wants a pink easy bake oven, he can have a pink easy bake oven. It doesn't make him any less of a brother to you, you know? I know that Shannon would say, and this is in the book, so I'm not divulging a private, but Shannon made the comment that if she would have been allowed to have played with a doll, that runway may have been different for her. And it would not have taken so much pain and so many years for her to navigate and become her authentic self. And, you know, just something as simple as boys don't play with dolls. Parents, boys play with dolls. So just deal with it. It's okay. And boys like pink. And girls can wear jeans and be tomboys. And we don't say tomboys anymore, because that's not really That's really not a nice thing either. But you see what I'm saying, right? I mean, yes. Okay, I'm off my soapbox.
I think I just want to add like maybe one little experience that gives me hope too. Of course, my son is, he just turned 14 last weekend. And of course, he's supportive of who I am, and I love him for that. And it's largely been kind of a non-issue for him. But Zoe was over here last weekend. My son had a friend over because it was his birthday. And we sat down and played board games together. Zoe, myself, my son. Oh, my battery's running low here. And another transgender woman. And what I think about is that other boy, my son's friend, he didn't even bat an eye at there being 3 trans women. He just kind of rolled with it. And hopefully that's the experience of, many kids these days. That it's not that they don't notice difference, it's that they kind of go, oh, okay, and it's
Yeah.
That gives me tons of hope.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'd like to share another story of hope, if I may. So one of the people that I work with fairly regularly in the operating room, great guy, LDS, wife and kids, very Idaho kind of story. We have a very good friendship at work. We text outside of work. It's great. And he was telling me a story that his daughter got in trouble at school. She got in a fight because another girl at school was teasing a gender non-conforming kid. And she stood up for that non-conforming kid and got in a fight. I think got in a shoving match with a girl. And so when my friend asked his daughter about, like, okay, tell me the story, what happened? She's like, well, I didn't think it was right for this person to say these mean things because you have your friend Zoey at work who you really like and seems like a great person, and why pick on somebody just because they're different? It's kind of to the effect of that. So I got to hear a story of my sort of ambassadorship have a positive, she did get in trouble at school, but I'm going to give her a pass on this one because she did the right thing and hopefully maybe that changed some other hearts and minds just a little bit. So I really appreciate that story that he shared with me.
Yeah, I try and tell people, like, in regard to the book, it's not designed to change your mind. It is designed to open your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
If you open your eyes and keep your heart open, you're going to come to your own decision regarding everything. But I think that for the most part, we are all designed to be good people. I think sometimes our eyes just have some shields on them, either given to us or ones that we put there for whatever reason, and I'm hoping that these conversations can help people, especially those outside the LGBTQ community, understand that those within the LGBTQ community are no different at all. Same hopes, same dreams, same desires. We all work, we all, have a family, we all want love. Everybody wants security in their housing and food and equal pay. It shouldn't be a thing. We shouldn't even have these conversations. They should just be. And, I hope that these conversations give those in the LGBTQ community an understanding and a hope, a faith that they are not alone. And you don't ever have to feel like you are alone. There are people that are out there that understand you and that see you, and you are valid. It's very rough, and you are not alone. Don't ever feel you're alone. Thank you guys all for being with us. I really appreciate you. I appreciate you, Greg. Thank you. Thanks, Shannon, as always. Zoe, hello.
Hi.
Why don't we know each other outside of this?
Something tells me we're going to.
And if y'all come to New York, post-pandemic,
Definitely.
please stop by the Bureau on the second floor of the LGBT Center.
Awesome.
Thank you, Greg.
All right. I'll post this online so you can share it with people, and I'll share it with Lynda.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, you guys.
Great.
I don't know how to do this very well. Hunter's been trying to teach me. All right. Is that a heart? I don't know. They always sound weird to me.
Maybe your hands don't work.
I know. My hands don't work. I never know. I don't know. It looks more like a thyroid than a heart. It does. Yeah, whatever. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you all. See you later.
Appreciate
All right,
you.
bye.
Thank you.